Order, order. First debate this morning is entitled Access to Careers Advice for 14 to 19-year-olds, called Stephen Lloyd.
I beg to move that the sitting order, Mr. Williams.
Called Stephen Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a privilege to serve under your chairmanship, and I appreciate the opportunity being given today to discuss and debate what I consider, and many others obviously in the Chamber consider, be a tremendously important issue. As chair of the all-party parliamentary group of further education, skills and lifelong learning, I believe that reforms and further improvements are still needed to improve careers advice for 14 to 19-year-olds. This is an important topic which will clearly shape the future job sectors and market in the UK, for better or worse. Many of us in the room will have memories of our own careers advice, and I'm quite sure that careers advice today is better than it was in my day. But one of the issues that come up pretty consistently, and I was actually talking to some young people only yesterday when I had a visit from my local college, Sussex Downs, and careers advice, it's one of those issues that we've always known is absolutely crucial for those of us MPs who have either employed people or hired people or been hired. And yet it's also one of those issues that consistently we've known for a long, long time has really not been as good as many of us think it should be. So this is a profoundly important issue, particularly as we're going into, or we're clearly in an ever more globally competitive society. So appropriate and good careers advice is absolutely crucial. And I don't believe we're there yet. I think it's had some pluses over the last decades, but I profoundly believe it has had some weaknesses. And as I'll be making clear in my speech, I think some of the government's improvements have improved it, but I do believe it needs to go a lot further. And I think as we go into a general election, I'm delighted to see my opposition, or our opposition front bench colleague here, so I'll be waiting to hear from her as well. I really do think as we go into an election, this is a very good opportunity, and a lot of colleagues in the Chamber, so they will be putting in some of their own suggestions, that both front benches take this away and actually try and come up with some further improvements to the careers advice after the election, because it is such an important area. As obvious, comprehensive and fully informed careers advice is what our children deserve. We all understand that. It's about pupils being able to make informed decisions. And that is much more complicated today than it was in my day, because there are many more jobs. There's a whole swathe and range of career opportunities that simply didn't exist when I was young. But that brings its own set of complexities. If young people aren't actually told and informed properly and intelligently about that wide range, how can they possibly make an informed choice? They just can't. And that, I think, is a terrible, terrible waste. Yes, of course, with pleasure.
Thank you very much for giving way. Does my honourable friend agree with me that one of the essential needs is to ensure that young people are given access to the kind of businesses that they might be interested in, and this particularly applies to engineering? So, for example, they can get the taste for it and then effectively choose the right kind of subjects to study in due course.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and I do entirely agree. And actually, engineering is a very good example, not least from a gender perspective. I still find it astonishing, even in my own constituency, the number of engineering firms that I have, particularly around pumps, curiously enough, and yet they very, very rarely receive applications from young women in Eastbourne, and that's simply because they're not told about the opportunity. So I agree entirely, and thank you. I thank my honourable friend for the intervention. So clearly more needs to be done for children aged 14 to 19. That's the key topic of this debate. So they're better aware of the choices available after secondary school and subsequently sixth form or college. At the moment, 63% of young people, recent research compiled by the Association of Colleges, can name A-levels as a post-GCSE qualification, but very few could name the other choices. And the next stat is what I find profoundly frustrating, as I've spent the last 4 3/4 years going on about it. For example, only 7% of pupils could name apprenticeships as an alternative qualification. And I find that absolutely ludicrous. Yes, I'll take an intervention.
Thanks for giving way and for securing this debate. Does he agree with me that the new proposed UCAS-style one-stop shop for young people who don't want to go to university, but which a system which could ensure that they don't become NEET, should be considered a priority by ministers for its introduction, to secure its introduction later this year?
I thank my honourable friend for the intervention, and I completely agree with him. Those are the sort of initiatives that can be an absolute game changer for many, many young people, giving them a much better understanding of the length and breadth of the opportunities open to them. But if I can return to the apprenticeships for a minute, I'm going to repeat that. It's on Hansard. Only 7%, according to this research, could name apprenticeships an alternative qualification. And I think one of the challenges for that is back to the reality that obviously the vast bulk of our teachers would have gone through the university route and become graduates, become teachers. So they're very, very skilled in that area. They can talk about university, they can talk about the advantages of gaining a degree, but for very obvious reasons, because they're not skilled up in the apprenticeships, they will often know very, very little about apprenticeships unless they're absolutely told. Yes, I'll give way to my honourable friend.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. And what I hear from young people within universities and FE colleges in Northern Ireland is that they believe that career officers are ill-equipped. Let's face it, not all of them, but a lot of them are ill-equipped to do the job, and we need to address that issue. But a further comment was that we need to have that closer working relationship with the industry and young people, because they're saying that the attitude of young people coming out to go into work isn't what it should be. And if we had that early stage from 14 on and day release or whatever with companies, it would make a different change.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and I concur very much with what he said. Well, one of the issues around careers advice I find quite extraordinary, considering we all understand in this room the importance of good careers advice, but you're talking about good career officers. I've always found it slightly odd that there's never really been, from either government, a whole song and dance and applauding and almost incentivisation and reward programme for very successful careers officers. Because if you think about it, a really good careers officer can be probably the individual who can play one of the most significant roles in any young person's career or future. And yet, I've never actually seen that in the paper. I've never actually seen, picture of Jane Smith or John Doe or what have you as the best careers officer in the Southwest, rewarded by the Prince of Wales or what have you. Do you see where I'm coming from? It actually should be much more of a career, in my opinion, that you get the best people, they're rewarded. I think they should be financially rewarded even better than they currently are, but more importantly, there should be a sense of real desire for very talented people with real ability to become careers officers. When you can get to that sort of situation, I think it could make a real difference. I give way to my honourable friend.
Yeah, just slightly moving away from that theme, does my honourable friend agree with me that university technical colleges really provide a hugely good launch pad for careers? And certainly if you're looking at engineering, for instance, getting that training with businesses, with the support of businesses, the involvement of businesses, is in itself a very useful career advice process.
I thank my honourable friend for the intervention. Yes, I do, with one caveat with the UTCs. I think the principle of UTCs is good. What I would like UTCs to be really clear about is to work very closely with the FEs in their area. Because one of the challenges with this country and this whole issue for decades and decades is it's been quite often changes and improvements have been very fragmented. And the UTCs is a good example. I'm an admirer of Lord Baker's theme on this. I think it's very, very good. But I also am aware that some UTCs tend to be already appearing to act in silos without the local FE colleges and the other training groups. And that would be a mistake. So I take on board the intervention, but what I'd put back to the Honourable Member, because I know he has very good links with the UTCs, is remind them to work closely in partnership, because one of the things one of my honourable friends mentioned earlier is crucial around careers. It's partnership. When partnership works with getting young people into the right jobs, giving them the right opportunities to understand what is available about there, be it across the piece with FEs, with UTCs, with business, with schools, then you have a successful outcome. When it's fragmented and in silos, you don't. Moving on. With the, as MPs, we're often told, and we recognise that there is a growing skills gap in the workplace. There was some recent piece, I think, in the FT that highlights it again. It's something that we know is a problem and a challenge. And when it comes to universities, we have everyone holding the same qualifications after graduating from universities. You've got a high proportion of young people competing furiously for the same jobs, while other sectors, and you were talking about engineering, my honourable friend, earlier, struggle desperately to recruit and entice young people into their profession. Now, I'm absolutely convinced, and my whole background was business before I went into politics, I'm absolutely convinced of this, that 9 times out of 10 it's ignorance. The young people don't know. They simply do not know what the wide range of the different opportunities and jobs are. And there are lots of ways of dealing with that, but it's back to why I'm holding this debate this morning. Clearly, the most important individual, the most important profession in this has to be careers advice, has to be the careers advisor. So, in my own opinion, young people are often misled, that's a tough word, but I think it's true, to believe that the only and superior way into a job is by taking A-levels and going on to university. I was the first MP after the general election to launch 100 apprentices in 100 days because I had a plan. And it was terribly successful in Eastbourne. We've had over 3,500 since. But what's more important is it galvanised the whole town around apprenticeships. Businesses, large and small, they've all really got involved. The success rate's been tremendous. I was at an accountancy firm only last week, Dominic Hill Accountancy, small company, 10 or 11 people. They have 3 apprentices. One started 4 years ago. She's now a qualified ACA. The other's 2 years into his ACCA, and the brand new apprentice started 3 weeks ago on his ACA apprenticeship. Now, the point about that, none of those 3 individuals, when they end up qualifying as accountants, and one of them is already, are actually going to be loaded with tuition fee debt. Not one. All of them have a job. I'm pretty darn sure that after they've qualified, hopefully they'll stay at Dominic Hill. It's a very good company. But the truth of it is that their qualification, because an accountancy qualification will be portable, they can go anywhere. So you're actually talking not 90% or 80% conversion rate, you're talking 100% conversion rate. I had a meeting the other day with the chief executive of AIG, the big insurance company. They're now providing apprenticeships in insurance broking and underwriting. My point behind this is the vast majority of young people still don't know that. The key person or individuals or group who would have that information, who would be able to feed that on to young people in schools and colleges, are going to be the careers advisors. So again, we're back to, obviously, the reason I'm holding the debate is that role, that profession, that group is an absolute game changer. Moving on, developments. Now, I appreciate and I respect that the coalition government has tried to address these problems, and they have, and I think that's laudable. Schools now have a statutory duty to provide independent careers guidance to pupils following the 2011 Education Act, which legally put the onus on schools, and this was implemented in 2012. I also welcomed last year's announcement in the autumn speech of the £20 million being given to improving careers advice, and I applaud the Department of Education's announcement last December that a new careers and enterprise company is to be created to work with employers to inspire and educate pupils. This does highlight that the government recognises it's an issue and that more needs to be done to improve careers guidance. So I think that's good, and I think that's heading in a positive direction. Yes, of course.
Thank you very much, Mr Williams, and I congratulate my honourable friend for securing this debate. One school in Pendle that's really embraced providing impartial careers advice is Marsden Heights Community College, where they've set up a job junction. The job junction opens on Monday and Thursday lunchtimes every week, and students employed in the Dream Team deliver careers advice, including discussing current apprenticeship vacancies available within Pendle with their fellow students. Would he congratulate schools like Marsden Heights who've taken the initiative, taken what the government's asked them to do and gone much further in providing impartial careers advice to students?
I thank my honourable friend for the intervention, and I applaud that. I think that's a really good example of a partnership working locally and the school being proactive, because they have to be. If it's not going to be the schools, the colleges play a key role, and I'm here as the chair of the FE APPG, but actually the schools are absolutely crucial. So I'd be very interested, because I work very closely with my schools, my own constituency in Eastbourne and Willingdon. I would be interested, the honourable member, for some more detail on that, and I'd like to downstream it locally. Right, back to the government. I do still retain some concerns, though, surrounding the announcements. And I was wondering whether the Minister could shed any further light on what the money, this is the 20 million, will be specifically spent on, and what is the remit on apprenticeships and informing young people about the range of apprenticeships in this programme. And finally, will this company work in relation to the FE sector as well? So I'll wait to hear from the Minister on that. I also note that the Secretary of State took part in the Education Select Committee one-off session to look into the state of careers advice, which we await a report on. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that. Anyway, today, essentially I'm arguing that still more needs to be done to highlight pathways into vocational or academic educational training. Yes, I give away to Honourable Friend.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to my Honourable Friend for giving way a third time. This time I want to talk about destinations from schools and colleges into workplaces and further education and higher education. Does my Honourable Friend agree with me that one better way of measuring the performance of schools is in fact destinations, and that would in turn stimulate more involvement in schools in promoting the right kind of careers?
I thank my honourable friend for my intervention. He is intervening frequently, but with very, very good points. And on that one, I concur totally. I had a discussion with one of my heads a few months ago, and he's a good guy, really good school, Cavendish. But he made a point, Stephen, if I get my brightest youngsters really focused towards A-levels and university, I kind of get a gold star. You know, I'm paraphrasing a wee bit from Ofsted. If I start pointing my brightest and youngest towards apprenticeships, I really don't. That's really, really important. Now, he said, Stephen, I do, because I profoundly, he's from the north, so he profoundly believes in apprenticeships, though he's in Eastbourne. But what he had to say was such an important point. You know, think about it. Government has to find a way to ensure that the right outcomes for our young people are really properly incentivised. Without it, we are just relying on individual heads or individual teachers to be brilliant. That's not good enough. I want our teachers to be brilliant, but I've been in business long enough to know you've got to have processes that underpin the teachers, and that was a very, very good example. Funny enough, my line here is how are schools to be incentivised to improve their careers advice provision? So there you go. I look forward to hearing from both the Minister and the opposition shadow and how they can answer that. The Association of Colleges, back to them for a moment, released a report very recently titled Careers Guidance Guaranteed. And in this document, some figures were uncovered. None of this is going to be rocket science or surprise people in the room, otherwise we wouldn't be here, but I'll tell you what it is. 70% of young people turn to parents for careers advice, and 57% turn to teachers for advice. That's completely logical, of course it is, and it's mad, because parents, with the best will in the world, only know what they know in their specific area, unless they're careers professionals, or unless there's someone who has a passionate interest in discovering all the 750 different career options that we seem to have today compared to my youth. And then I've already explained about teachers. The challenge with teachers, great that they are, is that they're often only, unless they've been trained, they're only going to know about their specific experience. Now, you can't change the fact that kids are going to go to their parents or to their teachers, because that's logical. Who do you trust most? You trust your parents. But if we don't improve, and I mean systematically, profoundly, and pouring focus and resource into actually improving the careers advice of the teachers, into improving the careers knowledge of the parents, you know, with open days, and I run apprenticeship initiatives within Eastbourne constantly, so even parents know about the different ones. But if we don't do that, then in 10 years' time, we're going to be exactly the same boat, where broadly speaking, going to be saying, you know, careers advice doing its best, not too bad, but. And I remember 35 years ago, when I was starting in my whole business career, and then there was, the phrase could have been careers advice is not too bad, but. And broadly, I think that's still the case, and it's just got to change. And I look forward again to the Minister and the Shadow Minister giving me a bit of an update of what their proposals are. Recent research carried out by the Local Government Association, dropout rates cost the country over £500 million, and that doesn't surprise me at all. Now, that's always going to happen a bit, but I'm quite sure a lot of that is related to poor advice. Talking about the NUS for a minute, this is something they've been very, very supportive on and very active on. I pay tribute to the National Union of Students, I really do. They've worked very closely, or are working very closely with me on a separate apprenticeship initiative. But what they say is, with the job market being so competitive these days, I'm sure that our honourable friends here would agree that it's now more important than ever for quality advice to be provided to 14, 19-year-olds. In my own constituency, the claimant rate, unemployment claimant rate has dropped to 2.8%. I really do believe that a lot of the reason for that is not just the national economy and the push we're doing locally, but on the apprenticeship initiative that has been so successful in Eastbourne. And the youth unemployment rate is now at 325, which is almost 35% lower than it was at the height of the recession. Now, one of my colleagues who intervened was talking about a school hub. One of the things that we're doing in Eastbourne I'd like to share with the Chamber and the Minister, because it's another example of when partnership working together. It's very successful, is we have something called the Eastbourne Jobs Hub, which is slightly similar, but not just from a school's perspective. And we've got the partners. We have Sussex Downs College, Eastbourne Borough Council, the County Council, the Chamber of Commerce, really, really important to get business right in the tent. We've got a dedicated manager, so I've got match funding from each of the different groups, which means even in a difficult economic climate, you can actually provide the funds to run it. Volunteers supported the dedicated manager, and I opened it myself about 9 months ago. And it's in the library as well, because something like that, having it in a central place is really important. Now, it's all about career advice. It's all about recruitment. It's all about helping people, guide people into different job opportunities, and it's a really successful scheme. So to me, the key thing with it, back to the schools, which is why I was interested in my honourable friend's intervention, is I think that sort of scheme does need to be done much more in the schools. It's a very good way of bringing businesses into the tent. And a lot of companies, small and large, really do enjoy going into schools, so long as it's structured. Then they know what they're supposed to do. I think it's something that the colleges equally can support the schools on, because my view is young people, I think, need to be start being informed about options around about the age of 14. So I tell you, that's what they do in Germany. From a young age, kids begin to learn more about the different professions, the different vocational opportunities available, and the different training opportunities available. Yes, I'll give way to Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for giving way again. One of the difficulties that we find when we speak to industry within Northern Ireland is, and the Honourable Member has mentioned the apprenticeships. what more can we do to incentivise, if that's the right word, young people to stay the course? Because we may have 10 or 15 young people will go into a course for apprenticeships on whatever career it may be, but perhaps only 4 will finish it. What more can we do to incentivise young people to stay the course?
I thank the Honourable Member for intervention, and that is very important. And to my mind, I think it's a number of things. One, actually ensuring that the government of the day, and the either locally, regionally or nationally, focuses a great deal in that area and applauds success. There's nothing more true in life than success follows success. And what I mean by that is that I would like to see more and more young people who have been through the process, either as apprentices or university or what have you. I would like to see them as ambassadors going into the schools. I'd like to see them as ambassadors working with local companies. I was talking to a constituent the other day actually about long-term unemployment for younger people, or the challenges of NEETs and what have you. And this constituent of mine, he knows it's something I'm very focused on, and one of the things that got me back into politics, as it happens. But I was saying to him, but there's no point me going out there. I'm a middle-class, posh bloke in a middle-aged suit. You know, it just doesn't work. I don't know how the hell Hansard's going to write that last sentence, but by the way. What I mean is, I know very well I'm a middle-aged, posh bloke in a suit going in and talking about apprenticeships. Now, I profoundly believe it, and I know a lot of young people at least will know me, so they know I'm absolutely passionate about it, but they would hear it so much better from a 19-year-old or 20-year-old who've been through the process, was really fired up about it, because you hear or people who look like you and sound like you much better. So I think that's something I'd like to see much, much more of. But what I'd like to do now is start winding up a wee bit, because I know there are quite a lot of people who want to speak. Back to the hubs thing. I do believe that improved access to colleges, schools, universities, Job Centre Plus, local authorities, and coming together with the career hub in the way that a lot of us in our own constituencies are doing job hubs. I think that's a very good way of working. I think it's a way of lifting the morale and the energy within a particular local area. So I think that's something that I would urge the government to keep progressing, and I look forward to hearing from both front benchers what their views are. But, and this isn't actually in my bit, but it's so true, I'm convinced that good as the hub's idea is, and necessary as it is, and I use them a lot, as I know a lot of my colleagues do, I'm absolutely convinced that one good careers officer who's really trained, who's really passionate what they do, can almost change the world around opportunities for young people more than anything. Because if you've got a careers officer where there's a real career path for that individual or individuals, where there's a real incentivisation for those individuals to actually convert people into either jobs or good, solid training, then that career and those individuals can change people's lives. So what I would like to see one day, if I'm still an MP in X number of years, is I would actually like to see... Who knows? I'm an optimist. I'm a liberal. I would love to see a situation where we actually hear more about individual career officers who have transformed people's lives in the way that probably everyone in this room knows a teacher who has done that. All of us know one or two teachers who have changed our lives in some way. I certainly do. I would love to be in a place where I can say that, in the chamber, in the House, at some sort of almost awards presentation, that people talk about careers officers who change their life, because they can. Because if you're a great careers officer and you really have a tremendous passion for your task and a tremendous knowledge of all the range of different opportunities today, then you can be a game changer. And the reason that hasn't happened is our fault, because we're the blimmin' MPs, because we're the government. And so it's about time that we really stepped up on that. And on that note, I look forward to hearing from my colleagues' interventions. Thank you very much.
Nick Dakin.
Thank you, Mr Williams. It's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Member for Eastbourne, who's done well to secure this debate at an opportune time. And what better time to have a game-changing in relation to careers, information, advice and guidance. Of all the things that needs addressing in the education landscape urgently, this is it. And I know that because the Humber LEP asked me back in 2013 to chair a skills commission for the Humber LEP, where we interviewed businesses across the Humber. And what they universally said was the thing, and this is business people speaking to us on behalf of the LEP in the Humber, what they said was universally needed was better careers, information, advice and guidance. I know from my lifetime in education that this careers is more broken now than it ever has been, but it was interesting to hear that coming from the business sector. And so the Honourable Member for Eastbourne is right in his analysis that we live in a greater, more fragmented education landscape than ever, with free schools, with UTCs and other things. And in that fragmented landscape created by this government, we need more than ever somebody who holds the ring for young people and holds the ring for UK PLC, and that is some sort of resource. That resource is information, advice and guidance in an independent way. The changes made in 2012 have upskittled what was there and made things much, much worse. The member for Eastbourne is right when he says employers are willing to get involved. By crikey they are. And also people working in education are willing to get involved. There is great goodwill on both sides, but it won't happen unless there's some resource in the middle. And that is what's been taken out. That is what's missing. Because it won't happen unless there's some resource in the middle, careers, advice, call it what we will, that makes it happen. Because people are looking at their bottom lines. And the Honourable Member for Eastbourne talked about the bottom line of accountability in terms of results and Ofsted and all that within the education sector. The bottom line of accountability for businesses is literally the bottom line of their profit and loss account. And unless you've got something that will put these things together and resource it properly, it won't happen despite that goodwill on both sides. So it's crucially important. The National Union of Students capture it in this statement. The provision of impartial, quality careers, information, advice and guidance is of fundamental importance to individuals and society. To individuals and society. It's a win-win. Why aren't we investing in this? Why have we dismantled it? As a result of the report that the Humber LEP produced, Lifting the Lid, in 2013, there have been some good initiatives in the Humber area. The gold standard recognition for those parts of the Humber that are seeking to produce high-quality careers, information, advice and guidance. That approach is bearing dividends. And also, as Anne Tyrrell, the principal of North Lindsey College, points out, the work that's been done on the Humber-wide portal for careers, Bridging the Gap, where information is put across on a portal which can be accessed, is making some difference. And there's also good practice, for example, the work that Baysgarth School is doing with John Leggett College in institutions working together in terms of getting information, advice and guidance better. But these are initiatives within a busy day, without being properly resourced from the centre. If we look at what the University and College Union, just a few statistics there to add to the statistics we've already had. Just 39% of learners surveyed said that they have spoken to a careers advisor. 39%. Less than half, 46% of young people say they've received group advice by a teacher at their school. Fewer still, 39%, said they had had a talk from a local careers officer or careers advisor, and only 10% had spoken to a business professional. These statistics tell the picture of where we are at the moment, and it frankly isn't good enough. It's not good enough for our young people, and it's not good enough for our society. I will give way.
I'm very grateful to Honourable Friend. I just wonder whether you agree with me that one of the issues that we urgently need to address is the knowledge base of teachers themselves as to the industrial and commercial bases in their own hinterland. If some of the training days were devoted to that sort of acquiring of the knowledge of what's going on in their own territories, to the industries, the commerce, and the job opportunities that are available for the pupils they teach, surely that would would pay dividends in terms of the destinations that our young people are going to reach when they qualify.
It absolutely will, and it does. And there will be schools and colleges and teachers and support staff up and down the land that have done that sort of activity, and they will recognise that it benefits them and benefits their young people that they teach or support. But that needs to be resourced. You know, if a teacher is going out on a week's placement in an industry, then somebody else needs to be in front of those kids teaching those kids. There is a cost involved. This is not a nil-sum game. There is things to be gained and things to be benefited from, but there needs to be resource there to make it happen. Good words and fine language doesn't make it happen. It needs to be properly resourced. So I was pleased when the new Secretary of State for Education, surveying the landscape of wreckage and chaos that she inherited from her predecessor, did identify careers information, advice and guidance as one of the things that needed fixing. And in her announcement on the 10th of December, I felt she was making heavy weather of what needed to be done, but at least she was recognising that there needs to be something there, and she talked about a new careers and enterprise company being set up. I'd be grateful if the Minister in answering could perhaps update us on the progress of that, because it's all gone rather quiet. What are the main priorities government expect the careers company to focus on? How will government know if the careers company is successful? What are its desired outcomes? What are the measures for this thing? And what role will local enterprise partnerships have in relation to the careers company? Because I actually think that local enterprise partnerships are well placed to do this job of bringing education and the world of work together in a locality and making things happen. Properly resourced, they are absolutely in the right place to make it happen. So I'd like to know how this new company will actually work with people on the ground so that things change for the difference, and we don't just see a lot of money going into the pockets of consultants and others without reaching and affecting young people on the ground. I'd like, finally, Mr Williams, to draw attention to the Association of Colleges campaign, which the Honourable Member for Eastbourne has already alluded to, which I think is an excellent campaign. Careers guidance guaranteed. It's what it says on the tin. If we can guarantee careers guidance in a proper way for our young people, everybody will be a winner. And the campaign that the AOC has been making is one that I would hope that everybody could sign up to. Improved access in a locality where colleges, schools, universities, Job Centre Plus, local authorities come together, led by the local enterprise partnership, to form a clearly signposted careers hub. This would provide a single point of information. Alongside explaining the benefits of academic education and progression to university, these careers hubs should provide young people with an opportunity to try their hand at various vocational options. So it would give that practical experience. It would also give the opportunity, the member for Eastbourne talks about the using of ambassadors. And I know that schools and colleges do use ambassadors well. But again, you need a resource to manage this, to make it happen, to draw people in, to lubricate the wheels. And a careers and information hub based within the LEP would deliver that. Together with all this, careers education, the AOC say, needs to be introduced and embedded into the curriculum. This would give children and young people the right grounding to make informed decisions and the right choice for them. And this education should include understanding of different types of businesses, how stereotyping affects careers decisions, the qualities needed to enhance employability, looking systematically at the choices available and what is required for particular jobs, and it should be complemented by visits from local businesses and work experience placements. As I began, Mr Williams, just to end on, this is crucially important. It's crucially important to the young people in our schools and colleges. It's crucially important to their individual futures, but it's also crucially important to UK PLC. It's crucially important to all of us. Let's game change, let's get it right, and let's put things in place for a better future for us and for them.
Order. I hope to start the wind-up to 22:11. There are 4 members seeking to catch my eye, so I would appeal to honourable members to limit the remarks to about 7 or 8 minutes. I'm not imposing a time limit as such, but if we can all discipline ourselves, everyone can get in. Heather Wheeler.
Mr Williams, thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my coalition colleague on securing this important debate today. I think the AOC report and the statistics that they've come out with are very interesting. In the last 4 3/4 years working in South Derbyshire, I've made it a key priority to put my businesses together with my schools and my further education college. This was helped by the fact that I actually opened our further education college in South Derbyshire. Up until before 2011, we didn't actually have one. So we do have one now, and we have a very good working relationship. Equally, I've encapsulated the needs of businesses with the future opportunities for our young people by setting up a business breakfast club. And I have my teachers and my heads and representatives from the colleges coming to my business breakfast club because I want them to learn about what business wants for the pupils to learn at their schools, and a phrase I often use, to be oven ready for work. And this apparently is a novel concept. I can't imagine why, because I remember when I was at Greycoat Hospital, we had careers advice. They didn't actually suggest I should become an MP, but fortunately other people have very sensibly suggested that their children should go there now. So, and many things are possible for future, and particularly in my patch in South Derbyshire, where we have so much manufacturing, the importance of STEM subjects really links in terribly well with my manufacturing companies that want to get involved with the schools because they want them to encourage the pupils, particularly the girls, to take up these subjects and make those decisions early on, 14, 15 and then 16, 18. And so the whole mixture there is actually can-do attitude. I'm disappointed in the statistics from the AOC. I understand why they felt that they needed to run this piece of survey work, because it does highlight where we can do better. And one of the things that I've always tried to do about the sunny uplands of South Derbyshire is make sure that we are not only a can-do area, but a can-do better area. And so when I link in getting people like the Institute of Physics to actually come and do a presentation in the schools, I don't just aim it at the 17, 18-year-olds, because they're almost having made the decisions about where they want to go. But I try and aim it at the 14, 15-year-olds, because then I think that that's the key for the future. William Allitt School, one of my schools that doesn't have a sixth form, they're actually finalists for the Big Bang at the NEC, the massive engineering exhibition that goes on for 3 days. And it's tremendous that they've become specialists in maths. They send some kids over to Russia for a 2-week space course. And I just think that that is absolutely brilliant, that kids in my area have those opportunities and genuinely are reaching for the skies and reaching for the stars. So I will just finish by saying I think that careers advice is incredibly important. The announcement made by the Education Secretary in December is giving us hope that we will have real changes as to how careers advice can be improved for the future. And I congratulate my coalition colleague on coming up with the brilliant idea that we need to have gold stars for careers advisors. Let us actually say that that person gave me the advice to say, I could be a nurse, I could be a bank manager, actually I want to be an engineer, or actually, absolutely.
Some excellent best practice, one could describe it as, within the schools. One of the essential problems that we seem to face is that you mentioned can do and can do better, but the difficulty is that schools that want to do, which clearly they do in your case, these cases, rather than have to do. And it's about the issue of schools not having to do that when they are assessed themselves in terms of their own performance.
I think my honourable friend actually makes an incredibly important point, because earlier on we heard mentioned that it's hardly surprising that teachers give role models to their pupils about going to university, because that was pretty much the route they came through. Whereas actually, when you're talking about so many young people really wanting to go into apprenticeships, I think one of the interesting apprenticeships that's absolutely taken off is the accountancy apprenticeship. And the fact that you are going to be, it's almost like going back to the old days of article clerks. And in effect, that's what I did. I did day release, evening classes. That's how I studied for my professional exams as an insurance broker. And, you know, it was a great career. 10 years in the city. I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, you live by really important moral stances. My word is my bond. And, you know, you don't lie to people. And if you can take that on then into your career elsewhere, that's great. So teachers perhaps aren't the best people to do this, but I applaud the initiatives that my schools are taking to talk to businesses and to take on this new Uber power charge careers service for the future. Thank you very much.
Ian Wright.
Say what a pleasure it is to serve under your chairmanship again, and I thank the honourable gentleman, the member for Eastbourne, in securing what I think has been an excellent and really important debate. Mr Williams, I come at this from two perspectives. First, my key priority is the people of Hartlepool. And we've got huge potential in my constituency. We've got a nuclear power station providing well-paid jobs and the prospect of an additional power station in the next 10, 15, 20 years. We've got Nissan up the road. We've got Hitachi in Newton Aycliffe. We've got the largest concentration of chemical engineering anywhere in Western Europe and the potential for carbon capture and storage. There is massive opportunity in my local economy. And yet, the ONS report from last year on young people in the labour market shows that Hartlepool, alongside Wolverhampton, has the largest number of young people unemployed and outside of education and training anywhere in England and Wales. Why is that the case? Why is there such a mismatch between the potential, skill shortages and the level of youth unemployment? And I think Careers Advice has got a role to play in making sure we can address that mismatch. My second consideration is that for the last 11 months of the previous Labour government, I was Minister for 14 to 19 Reform and Apprenticeships, and I had responsibility for information, advice and guidance. And I was very conscious, Mr Williams, that in far too many cases, Careers Advice was seen as a secondary activity, often even a nuisance that took time and attention away from the core business of learning. Careers Advice was often delivered as a one-off event in a single afternoon. Now, I was keen to see a new approach, which was the purpose of the new strategy for information, advice and guidance, which was published in October 2009. Now, I'm not suggesting there was ever a golden age for careers guidance, but it was something that I, as the Minister, was really keen to push up the agenda. And I have to say, though, Mr Williams, as we've heard in the debate by my honourable friend for Scunthorpe, the provision of a careers advice to young people under this government has got markedly worse. Reductions in funding and personnel, increases in fragmentation in the school system, and organisational change, such as the dismantling of connections, has meant that young people often face real barriers to navigate what is on offer to them. Good careers advice can also be an important tool of effective social mobility. You should get good careers advice regardless of where a young person lives, regardless of their background, and regardless of who their parents are and who they know. But often that's not the case, and it is a question of who you know and what your connections are that means that you can be able to get into good careers and professions. The CBI has said that 93% of young people are not getting the careers information that they need. But good careers information, advice and guidance is needed more than ever because the certainties of the past have gone. In my patch, you know, my grandfather's generation, you could leave school at 15 on the Friday and you'll be working in the steelworks and the shipyard on the Monday and you'd stay there for 40 years. Yeah. That certainty and that clear route has gone and has gone forever. The futurist Thomas Frey states that 60% of the best jobs in the next decade haven't even been invented yet. At the same time, technology threatens a third of all UK jobs in the next 20 years, especially at the low-end, low-skilled end of the employment market. And as Andreas Schleisser of the OECD has said, because of rapid economic and social change, schools have to prepare students for jobs that have not been created, technologies that have not been invented, and problems that we don't yet know will arise. Now, in these circumstances, there needs to be much greater alignment between education, policy and business and industrial policy, with effective careers advice and meaningful engagement between businesses and schools acting as the bridge. But the government hasn't helped with this. Government policy... Let me just make the point, and I'll certainly give way to the Chair of the Select Committee. Government policy is not addressing this issue, and a narrowing of the curriculum by ministers means that creative learning, project solving, and team building in the widest possible sense, enterprise education in that widest definition, which is what is required for a knowledge-based economy of the 21st century to allow us to compete in the modern world, is not being championed, and careers advice is being downgraded. I'll certainly give way.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman. He's right to say that there was no golden age, and certainly the careers system that he left behind at the end of the Labour government was pretty weak. Does he agree with me that the failure has been to change the incentives on schools to ensure that all schools do what a small number do now, which is provide first-class careers advice and guidance? But one of the major things was to make sure that in places like Hartlepool, young people did get qualifications that had value, and he'll be delighted, as I am, to see young unemployed people 18 to 24 go down from the 1,200 that he left when he left government in 2010 to 615, I think it is, on the latest figures. It's fantastic news, and right across the country we're seeing that transformation under this government as compared to the one he left behind.
But he will understand, Mr Williams, that we want to see a universal and properly resourced career service staffed by committed and professional people with the necessary breadth of knowledge and experience to be able to say, this is what the future looks like. The potential for you as a young person is huge. This is what's on offer. Let me guide you through that. And that's not happening at the moment. In my time available to me, Mr Williams, I have 6 specific brief points. First is...
brief.
It will be brief, I promise. The first is, this debate, quite rightly, is about 14 to 19 careers advice. But actually, providing appropriate careers advice and information about the future world of work needs to come at an even younger age. We have a pressing need to encourage more women into engineering, but all the evidence suggests that girls are put off or pushed into gender stereotypes or pigeonholes when they're at primary school. So encouraging and motivating 8, 9 and 10-year-olds is a vital prerequisite to good engagement and effective careers guidance for 14 to 19 reforms. What's the Minister doing with regards to that? Secondly, work experience is not given the importance that it deserves. And young people with families who don't have those connections at the golf club or whatever are going to miss out. I was lucky. I had 2 weeks at a firm of solicitors when I was 16, which was absolutely invaluable for me because it convinced me that there was no way on God's holy earth that I was going to have a career in law. But actually being able to dip your toe in the water and be able to try different things, I think is important. Government needs to recognise this and ensure work experience is given more priority. Thirdly, and I think an honourable gentleman opposite has mentioned this, destination data and employment and training routes for young people should be considered a key part of school reporting in evaluation. And actually, Mr Williams, should even form the remuneration package of the head teacher and senior school management. You should be able to make sure that actually a wide and impartial range of advice is given rather than being pushed towards a certain end, and that's not happening at the moment. Fourthly, face-to-face guidance is effective and wanted by young people. Online research is valuable, but shouldn't be seen as a substitute to discussing matters, particularly with professionals. The government needs to address this. I'm conscious of time, but I certainly will.
Thank the member for giving way. Just when he talks about face-to-face advice, would he agree with me that the sooner that can occur, the better, because all too often it is only a one-off at very late in the day with 15 or 16-year-olds, that it should happen very early on in the secondary education of children.
The honourable gentleman is absolutely right. It should be a key process throughout, a key thread running along the education, evaluation and experience of the young person. Impartiality of advice is absolutely important, and in far too many cases that's not given, particularly for 11 to 18-year-old schools where pupils might be pushed towards going into the sixth form where they would rather consider a vocational or apprenticeship route. And sixthly, we should really value the careers professional. As the Honourable Gentleman for Eastbourne said, these are vital professionals who can navigate young people through a tricky and complex world. We should treasure them a lot more. Mr Williams, for far too long, careers advice has been considered a secondary consideration, somehow as an add-on. But in the modern world of work, where we need to have a knowledge-based economy and we don't know what the future looks like, careers advice needs to be much more central to what the education offer of this country is.
Meg Hillier.
Mr Williams, and a pleasure as ever to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate very strongly the member for Eastbourne for securing this debate on what is a crucial subject, and I represent one of the youngest constituencies in the country. And Mr Williams, I can barely walk down the street in my constituency, certainly, and can never visit a school or educational establishment without young people raising with me very directly their concerns and demands about what careers services they want. So I'm here today really to speak for them. I completely endorse the comments of most of the honourable members who've spoken already, because what young people tell me they want is face-to-face guidance when they need it. And in my constituency, this is particularly important because many of the young people don't have their own connections. They don't have parents with understanding and knowledge of the modern world of work. Many of them have arrived in this country and perhaps their parents haven't got good English. And just on Monday, I was at the KPMG City Academy in my constituency with the Honourable Member for Stoke, and a Year 12 pupil there told us that she wants to be a doctor, but her mother is a single parent, and she said that I don't have the connections that some of my friends in the school have, and the school helped provide her the connections which helped level the playing field. In her case, KPMG and the City of London sponsor the academy that she's at, and KPMG helped provide her with support, as well as other pupils having mentors through KPMG. And those business links, as my honourable friend, the member for Scunthorpe raised, are really vitally important in doing this. And talking to business in the community and head teachers, one of the key things is to link those business links with individual pupil achievement in the school, as well as giving them an eye on the world of work. That is more complicated than simply careers advice, but that business connection embedded in schools is something that I've always supported, and one of the reasons why I was broadly in favour of the Academy's programme. But moving on to careers advice more specifically, Mr Williams, I've been delighted to work from the outset with a charity called My Big Career. We found each other because I'd been doing some work encouraging professionals in my area to become the family for the young people in Hackney who don't have their own connections. And those professionals and sixth formers I got through into networking events where they shared notes, found each other, and those young people made their own connections. The redoubtable Deborah Stretfield decided to set up My Big Career because she's a professional careers advisor working in the private sector and often commissioned by parents privately, as well as their own private school that employs her. And she realised that this was not the same standard of careers advice that was going through many state schools. So she set up the charity and now offers, happily I was able to secure office space in Cardinal Pole School in my constituency, which now has an outstanding sixth form. And she's been offering face-to-face advice, not just her though, but she's been getting in volunteer careers advisors and crucially professionals from business who are trained up to give the right kind of professional advice to those pupils. They've also offered a results day service, which was so effective last year. Shockingly, the first time in Hackney's history that pupils got results day service with volunteers trained to go in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and when a young person missed a grade, get access to discussions with universities, so that for example, 4 young people who would have not got into their nursing degree got onto a nursing degree because of that input. And that's something that should be standard. But that was because a professional qualified careers team was in there at that point. And young people tell me this is what they want. For many young people, that face-to-face is so important because they're just not getting it through other routes. But the key thing about My Big Career was the high-level professionalism of the service. And I echo the points that other colleagues have made, that we need good, properly qualified careers advisors. And I also echo the points from my honourable friend, the member for Hartlepool, about making sure that teenagers make the right choice early on. One of the things My Big Career has discovered is that many young people were being encouraged, quite rightly and effectively, to get good GCSE maths. But for many of them, a C grade was just not enough for the course they wanted to go on at university. They needed a B grade. Many heads of maths even did not understand the significance of the B grade for their future career choices. So there were sixth formers who were finding that they're very bright, very able, very capable, but that one dropping a grade in maths GCSE was preventing their career options in the future. So it just goes to show again the professional understanding of good qualified careers advisors makes a difference throughout the school, not just at 14. And the government, Mr Williams, has thrown money at careers advice, and one level we should be accepting that, the £20 million gone to the careers company. But I have real serious questions about how this has been tendered, whether it's really best at national level, because there is no roadmap for how the careers company is going to actually deliver good quality careers advice throughout our education establishments. And I hope that the Minister can give us some more information, because we're all really desperate to know how this will help people in Hackney and Hartlepool and Scunthorpe and all around the country. And I want to know how it's going to be monitoring independent advice and guidance provided directly by schools, because the quality varies enormously, as we've heard. And I too have a list of particular asks for the Minister. First of all, we want a clearer set of requirements about what's, as the Honourable Member for Eastbourne described, appropriate and good guidance. We don't have a common set of standards at the moment, and it's really vital that we do, because it's not fair that a young person going through a school, sometimes a very good school, might have their future completely altered by the quality or lack of quality of careers advice that they have, and we want to see a common standard there. Crucially, we need really good evaluation about what works and the quality control. The key thing is this bit in the middle that my honourable friend, the member for Scunthorpe, talked about, the broker between businesses and young people. That can be the careers advisor, but it can be in terms of work placements, making sure that rather than young people just being thrown at work placements that have been brokered by a careers service, saying, actually, I want to do this, and I need to know who I can speak to go and do that particular role. And I represent Shoreditch, which the Prime Minister and Chancellor called Tech City, but this is a hub of future jobs and growth in this country. But most of the jobs in Shoreditch don't exist as such. They don't have job titles because they are so new and emerging. And I can sometimes broker the connections because of the peculiarity of an MP's role, where we see a lot of different things. And we really need to make sure that our teachers, and particularly our careers advisors, are aware of those opportunities and can make those links. And that crucial bit in the middle needs to be able to broker, so that when they find a young person with a particular skill, they know how to make the two or three phone calls that will get them the connection to the career opportunity that they could really learn from. We also, I think, need to see greater stability of funding, because so that we can really be sure that there is a career path for good quality careers advisors. On outcome data, I've welcomed the government's decision to include this as a really key part of schools, but we still don't have much update from the DfE on how this is going to work, and many schools in my area feel challenged about how they're going to do it. I believe, I suppose I represent Shoreditch, so I would, Mr Williams, that a good, well worked up software which would allow alumni to be tracked, but also crucially give alumni something back in terms of networking, could be very useful. And I've been talking to UBS Bank, who sponsor Bridge Academy in Hackney, about this, but I think that there is a real opportunity to be grabbed there, but it needs to be fleshed out, and I hope the Minister will do that. I think we also need, as I've mentioned about this issue around grade B maths, but this underlines an issue about having a clear understanding throughout schools of how early choices can affect careers and can damage career options. And I think that the government needs to make sure that that is somehow embedded through a set of standards. So there are my asks, Mr Williams. I think this is a crucial issue. My young people in Hackney really want to see action on this. They want to see the best provided to all, and I back them in that. Thank you.
Order. We have two further speakers wishing to catch my eye, and now we have 7 minutes. So if you can do the maths yourself. Tim Shannon.
Okay, Mr Williams, thank you very much. In a very short time, I'll make a few comments if I can. Can also, first of all, congratulate the Honourable Member for Eastbourne on bringing forward the matter for consideration. It's good for us all to have an input. As a Northern Ireland Member of Parliament, I'm very conscious that we need to cater access to careers advice, which teaches out options for every young person, so that they're not left to feel at sea about where life is going to take them. Everybody, I believe, is good at something in life. My wife says it gives me a list of things that I'm not good at around the house, but I'm very glad to say that when it comes to the issues for our students, we need to do something for them, and that's what it's about. We have a nation of very ambitious, driven and generally hopeful youth who do have clear careers aspirations. There are two worries. The first one is that there's still a group which are unsure about which path to take and need guidance. And the second is the concern that the access we give to careers is not keeping up with the ambitious demands of these young people. and as a result misguiding or misleading through lack of information about the relevant qualifications and steps needed for them to succeed at their goals. With young people today so impressively strong-minded, it is not necessarily true that ambitions for their career paths were even founded through educational institutions or careers services advice. This is also not to say there aren't those young people under pressure from others about what they feel they should do, perhaps following the example of friends or expectations of family members. And while it is good to be encouraged and motivated to achieve, access to an individual-driven career service can help avoid career paths that are not suited to the individual. The point is, we need to have the right direction for the students to go, and that's what has been the thrust of what was said so far. One of the local grammar schools in my area, Regent House, has implemented a career strategy whereby the mock results for exams were handed over to the children all at once in an envelope, and then the children were taken and given careers advice based on their results. That, I believe, Mr Williams, is the way forward, and it has shown a greater way of doing things, maybe a better way of encouraging greater studying. And I believe that from between the ages of 14 to 16 years of age, aspirations start to take full form. Access to careers advice should not rely solely on group broad advice but specifics. A flaw that has been recognised is that young people are advancing down career routes for which they are not fully aware of the qualifications needed, or for some have no clear vision of where they want to go to employment, resulting often in an exit from the education system because they cannot see what it can do for them. I would make this point, Mr Williams, if I could, and I'm very conscious of time, and I'm by keeping very clearly to my time as well. Within this particular group, the concern is that there are not enough advice pushing for those individuals to acquire work experience, interview skills, CV building capabilities, and simply sit down with someone, talk through their aspirations and be aware of the expectations and relevant qualifications that are needed. For those leaving school, further education and going to further education colleges, the route they see for themselves is often more vocational or learning a trade. And the Northern Ireland Strategy for Apprenticeships, we recognise that not only through apprenticeships can we ensure and enable mobility within a sector and across the wider economy by including a breadth of training beyond the specific needs of a job through both on and off the job training. Cert College, the Southern Eastern Regional College in my area, gives great advice. The universities in Northern Ireland have been lucky enough to keep student fees low, but at the same time we need to be able to ensure that those who want scholarship programmes are aware of how to source funding. In conclusion, we cannot let our best, youngest and brightest be hindered in reaching their potential because they did not know how to get there. We must ensure that the best advice is available to the greatest amount of children, and this is something I believe that our education system must ensure is available as a right and not a bonus, and that's why this debate is so important. Thank you.
Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Williams. Thank you for fitting me in. I'm afraid I wasn't originally down because of the chairing of the committee, the Education Committee this morning. Such an important topic, careers, advice and guidance. The Select Committee produced a report on this. People listening to the speeches and the thoughtful speeches from many colleagues, the heart of the problem is a simple one, though, in my opinion. It doesn't come out in the myriad of reports that have been produced on this subject, or indeed in enough speeches given by colleagues in this chamber. The problem is there are insufficient incentives for schools to take it seriously. That's why 80% of them don't. It's simple. They don't have to, you don't lose your job, you don't get fired, you don't get publicly humiliated for failing to do this properly. You do if you don't get 5 good GCSEs. So you've got to change the accountability regime in a high-stakes environment in which you very easily get publicly humiliated, sacked, or lose your job. I'm repeating myself, a tautology, if ever there was one. That's the central problem. So how do we change that so we get a better balance, a nudge that doesn't put too much, doesn't just add further burdens, it seems, on leaders within schools and colleges, but actually addresses the central problem. The committee didn't have any perfect solutions, but we said at least, and say this to the Minister, make schools publish their careers plan. So at least parents can look at it, employers can have a look, you could tell, Ofsted could check in advance. Hard-working ministers could sit in Whitehall, as I know the schools minister often does, late at night and look up what on their website. Get it on the website. And the other thing is, the government helped fund a quality in careers standard for schools. They've helped fund it. It exists. So make them work towards it and keep it. I know it's a bit bureaucratic. I know it's a bit input-esque. But we haven't got great destinations data yet. We haven't got the other solution. So we've got to give it a nudge. So let's not have any more reports from all these alphabet soup of organisations. Teach First have just done this one this week. It's got some good stuff in it. But if you don't, the central issue is that schools aren't incentivised to take it seriously, and they have some perverse incentives like filling their sixth form places, which mean they won't even let colleges in. address the incentives, get your framework right, stop faffing around with all the other talk, and we could actually make a real difference to the lives of children. That's worth making the point that actually if you look at what's happened by having a government under the previous Secretary of State, who was pretty dismissive, it's got to be fair to say, of this agenda, but what he wasn't dismissive of was the need to raise standards in schools, to challenge the low standards that have prevailed too long, and to put in place a pressure on the system to get people to sit at qualifications and do a curriculum and syllabuses for exams that actually mattered to people and were of some value. And that is already starting to pay off. Combined with an economic plan which focuses on enterprise and growth, you see transformations, which I find it sad to say, for those who are trying to be fair-minded, don't get properly reflected in speeches by colleagues opposite. So, my honourable friend, the member for Scunthorpe, who I admire enormously, as I do, in fact, all the colleagues opposite, he doesn't mention youth unemployment has gone from over 1,000 when the Labour Party left office. That was 1,000 young people scarred for life. We know it scars them for life when they're unemployed when they're young. Over 1,000 to 425 today. 600 young people's lives transformed by a government that's delivering, not just talking. You look at if you look at Hartlepool, it's gone from 1,200 to 600. 600 young people whose lives have been turned around. And in South Hackney, and that report, it's down from 750 unemployed youngsters when Labour left office. 750 sitting there, down to 250, and that's great news.
It's not about unemployment amongst young people. Yvonne Farage.
Thank you, Mr Williams. And I congratulate the honourable member for raising this important topic, and from all the honourable members, the speeches demonstrate the importance of it. Now, careers advice is broken. It's on life support. The government are reluctant to take it seriously. Those aren't my words as a member of the opposition. They're the CBI and they're the Skills Commission. And the Education Select Committee have also been fairly critical of, in 2013, they described the government as there's been a worrying deterioration in the overall level of provision, and this is pretty damning. And it's damning because careers advice, as I think we've heard from everyone here today, is absolutely vital. Young people need to know what the options are, not just what A-levels to take, what universities to go to, but what training they might need to become an engineer or to work in IT, what the emerging jobs market is in the area, what they need to access the full range of education and training options, as the Association of Colleges have said in their excellent report. And what have the government done? They've pushed the responsibility onto schools and colleges. Schools must provide access to impartial careers advice for young people aged 14 to 19. They're told that they should be independent and involve outside providers. However, the schools do have a vested interest in keeping up the numbers of students studying A-level courses to ensure a viable number if they have a sixth form of their own. In some cases, the survival of their sixth form depends on keeping those students. And I have heard from some sixth form colleges, further education colleges, they're actually being denied admission to schools to give the full range of options. Many teachers follow the academic route and they don't have the experience of the world of work. They don't know the local economic conditions and they don't understand the range of experiences that are offered and going down the earn and learn route. Indeed, I've heard examples from young people of the pressure they're being put under to stay on and take A-levels and not take apprenticeships. One young person told me they were actually ostracised by the school when they said they wanted to do an apprenticeship. And another particularly savvy young person said to me, I'm just seen as a walking pot of money. So it's no... Yes, I will give way.
Grateful to have raised the issue of apprenticeships. The TUC and Union Learn said, I think in the last few days, that they completely oppose the Labour Party policy to abolish Level 2 apprenticeships. Will the Labour Party look at that again? Because Level 2 apprenticeships, where they transform income and they have high-quality training, should be retained. And we mustn't lose this vital building block in providing support to young people.
Thank you. I won't go into that too far, but I will say that Level 2 will not be branded as apprenticeships, but certainly the training will not be going. It will be a pre-apprenticeship, but that is a different issue. So really, it's no wonder that careers advice is simply not happening. 3/4 of schools that Ofsted visited weren't giving good, adequate careers advice, and so far that's not so good. And what else has happened? Well, we've heard about the new Careers and Enterprise Company, and there are a number of questions that have been asked about that. And I do wonder, is that not a job that's already being done? I mean, as the chairman of the Education Select Committee, who's here today, said, he actually quoted, "It's clear that the new body replicates the very role and remit of the National Careers Service, and only the leadership and government is different." I would like to hear more about what is going to happen with that. And the fact is, we do need more than a non-enforced duty on schools which simply passes the buck. 1 in 3 teachers say they don't have the right expertise and resources to adequately carry out effective information, advice and guidance. We need a complete rethink in how we deliver careers advice to young people, and rebuilding the careers advice service will be an early and vital priority for a Labour government. Fragmentation, short-term and unsuitable initiatives are absolutely endemic. We need a careers service that's modelled around what provides the best outcomes for the young person and for the country, because they are our future workforce, as we've heard today. We need a careers service that guarantees that face-to-face, one-to-one guidance is available for all young people who need it, and ensures that businesses and employers, as we heard from my honourable friend from Scunthorpe, are linked in with that service as well. And building closer links with industry is absolutely vital. But I would like to add my support for the face-to-face guidance, as somebody who worked in face-to-face advice, even though not in this area. Websites can help many young people, but many more will need face-to-face contact. The level of contact may well be different. It may be just initial contact. It might be contact that takes them further through. But those who have, particularly those, as Centrepoint have said, those who have little parental support, poor literacy or other support needs, may need more assistance. They might need more help. The other watchword, I think, is working together, which is why I support the idea of the careers hubs, which we've heard from a number of honourable members today. I visited the South Gloucester and Stroud College at their campus in Bristol the other month. They have an excellent careers hub. They work with schools across the area, they work with independent schools, they work with academies, they work with state-controlled schools, primary schools, and they provide a one-to-one advice from a professional career advisor. They employ the professional careers advisors. They're the point of contact for all employers. They work with the LEP, and they're looking at expanding their service. It's an excellent model for careers advice for the future. And such hubs, if they were rolled out across the country, could provide this single point of information about careers advice and career options in each area, and employ the professional careers advisors whose work is so valued. Their other function could be to coordinate the work experience, and we've heard from our honourable friend from Hartlepool how important work experience is for young people. That's another postcode lottery of provision currently. The taster session is valued by young people and by employers alike, but not enough employers are actually incentivised to do that. And it can provide the real benefits. It introduces the reality of work for young people, as my daughter found out when she said to me, horrified after she came home after her first day, "The manager told me what to do, and do you know what? It wasn't sensible." I thought, well, that's a good life experience for you. But it also allows students to consider perhaps a wider range of roles that they may have given. And as my honourable friend from Hartlepool said, they put their toe in the water. They might not like it, but they might. It gives them a wide range. And it's also indisputable that if you do have the early experience of work, people are less likely to end up unemployed and more likely to get better jobs and earn more money. But less than half of young people have got access to high-quality work experience at the moment. We really fall behind other countries like France in this. And we also need to work more with the employers to break down some of the barriers for the perhaps harder to place young people, people with disabilities, and dispel the preconceptions that the employers may have, that those young people can't do the jobs that they are on offer. And that is where a careers hub could also help those young people, as well as the young people perhaps in the more mainstream. Destination tracking is another area where we believe should be taken further. Schools actually have a responsibility for their pupils that goes beyond simply where they go on leaving. A young person who goes to university and drops out in the first term because the course is unsuitable for them isn't a success. A young person who takes an apprenticeship and completes that apprenticeship is a success and should be celebrated as such. So we actually do believe that we need to track destinations for much longer than it's done so far. And currently, the worrying rise in the number of unknowns recorded by the local authorities is a concern, not only from the we don't know where they are, but from a safeguarding point of view as well. I mean, our young people are the workforce of the future, as we've heard before. We're relying on them to pay our pensions, to look after our pensions, basically. They need to be given every opportunity to have the worthwhile and satisfying career and develop their skills throughout their working lives. And if we don't give them access at the beginning of their working life, when they're thinking about what work to do, to help them navigate this confusing landscape of the world of work, and it is getting ever more confusing, then actually we are failing young people. But we're not only doing that, we're jeopardising our future economic success as a country.
William, thank you. It's a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and this has been an excellent debate, and I congratulate my honourable friend for Eastbourne for securing it, and to all honourable members for the contributions they've made. I thought, Mr Williams, I'm clearly not going to be able to respond to every single one of the questions that has been asked and the points raised, but I thought maybe I would start by observing something that I think we can all agree with, which the honourable member for Hartlepool said, which is that there has never been a golden age in careers and advice and guidance. And as a former minister who came in at the end of a long government full of largesse, I think he will have noted, therefore, that large government budgets have not proved to be the solution to the lack of advice and guidance. And while he made a perfunctory reference to connections, it is the case that nobody has come up to me, either since being elected to Parliament or since being appointed to this job, and mourned the scrapping of the connection service. It may well have had very good intentions, but the reality is it achieved very, very little with a relatively large budget and facing the largest peacetime budget deficit in our history. It was a right and proper economy to make to get rid of connections as it was constituted at the time. So there was never a golden age, and certainly the last government did not manage to produce a system of careers, advice and guidance that was leading to high-quality advice being provided to young people throughout the country and in all schools. And we as a government have recognised that, and we have recognised, very much thanks to the good work done by the chairman of the Select Committee and others, and have taken a number of steps to ensure that schools are more focused on their responsibilities. And people have referred to the introduction of statutory guidance requiring schools to provide independent advice and guidance, but we certainly recognise that too few schools are doing so. There were a lot of calls on the opposition benches for proper resourcing of this. And there is a difficulty here, because either proper resourcing means more money dedicated, ring-fenced, to the provision of careers advice and guidance and the employment of more careers advisors, in which case they do have to answer, and I know they never like answering this, but they do have to answer what other things they're going to cut, or what taxes they're going to raise, or what borrowing is going to be increased to provide that resourcing. Or I just finished my thought, and then I am very happy to, but all that resourcing has to come from within the existing schools' budgets. And the reality is that good schools of all kinds, grant-maintained schools, academies, all kinds of schools, that there are good schools who realise that it is absolutely critical to make an investment of their school's budget into the employment of a careers advisor or a careers coordinator. There are lots of different models that work, but good schools do realise that this is a priority, and there is nothing stopping any school from deciding to invest some of their resources in proper advice and guidance. I give way.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way, and just for the record, the committee did not call for additional money, recognising it might have been, in an ideal world, it might have been a good thing, but the most important thing was to change the incentives for schools, because the fact that 20% of schools can find the budget, and they tend to be successful schools delivering outstanding academic results as well, shows it can be done. In fact, they're mutually enhancing. The other thing I'd just say to the Minister is, if you wanted a crude proxy, I remember saying this to the honourable gentleman when he was a minister in the Labour government, a crude proxy for the success of the education system, it would be how many young people end up neat at the end of it. And the shadow minister's constituency, I'm pleased to see, has gone from 900 when Labour left office and to 140 today.
Of course, I'm always particularly grateful to the Chairman of the Select Committee, and I am going to come on to his point on incentives, which I think is a very good one. I thought that probably the most useful thing I can do for people who participate in this debate is to answer some of the questions about the new careers company, because I do understand that people are, I think, broadly and in principle supportive of it, but question how it is going to fit into the landscape, and in particular what its relationship or relative functions will be with the National Careers Service. The key point about the new careers company is that what we observed is that there is no shortage of organisations offering high-quality activity. Straight after this debate, I'm meeting the people who run Inspiring Futures, which is an excellent programme. There's speakers for schools, there are any number of online resources, and there is, of course, the National Careers Service, which itself provides very high-quality advice to lots of young people as well as to adults. So there's no shortage of provision. What there is a great difficulty in schools in understanding what's available, what's high quality, what would really meet the need that they have identified that their young people have. And the point of the careers company under Christine Hodgson is therefore to create a structure whereby every school has somebody that they can ask to help them through this forest and to identify the resources and the providers who will help them provide much better range of experiences and inspiration to young people. And it will focus initially on mapping what is out there, because you've got to start by knowing what is out there before you can start guiding people, and then on Lord Young's excellent idea in his report for the Prime Minister of appointing an enterprise advisor who will be a current or recently retired local executive from the public sector or the private sector who will be attached to a school and whose role will be to help that school identify local businesses that can come in to the school, local businesses and employers who can provide work experience, and a series of the kinds of resources of the different programmes that can be relevant for the school. That local enterprise advisor, they will identify with the help of their local economic partnership. And I entirely agree with those who've said that local economic partnerships have an obvious role to play in helping schools understand who out there can help them deliver on their duty. Because I don't think that many teachers or head teachers are failing to provide careers advice and guidance because they don't believe in it. It's because they're very busy and they're not particularly qualified to do it. And there's no criticism of them to suggest that. They need some help. There are a plethora, as we have heard, a plethora of local business executives who are only too willing to get involved, but we need to have some structure of brokerage and of guidance to the schools on how they can give better advice and guidance to their young people. So those will be the two main priorities for the Careers Company. It will have a pot of money, a smaller pot of the 20 million, about 5 million, which it will be able to back new ideas for new kinds of experience and of advice and guidance, and that will act more as a sort of seed fund or a venture fund. And then it will also be working in a more long-term way on Lord Young's other idea, which is for an enterprise passport, which would be probably an online record of all of the non-formal educational achievements of a young person. So all of the volunteering they've done, all of the holiday jobs they've done, all of the clubs that they've joined and their other extracurricular achievements at school, so that employers can have an objective record of what is the full range of the contributions that young people have made to their community when judging their fitness for school. Mr. Williams, in the final minutes, and I am of course happy to answer any further questions colleagues might have in writing about the Careers Company, but I would just like to focus on the point of the careers advice and guidance. The point of it is to lead to a career. And the point of every career is to have a series of satisfying and fulfilling jobs. And I hope that every honourable member of every party will recognise the signal achievement of this government, which is to have created more jobs, as my honourable friend, the Minister for Employment, reminded us, more jobs in Yorkshire than in France, and to have created more jobs in the United Kingdom than in the whole of the European Union. That is the key to a career, is having an economy that creates jobs, that creates new jobs in new sectors, requiring new young people with new skills. Of course they need advice and guidance. Of course they need advice and guidance. And of course they need to have clear data that helps them understand which choices of qualifications lead to which possibilities of career. But ultimately, if you do not have an economy that is creating employment at the speed that we have been doing so in this company, there is no point having the best careers advice and guidance in the world. Right now, you could have fantastic careers advice and guidance possibly, but if you had the misfortune to be a young person in Spain, your chances of having a fulfilling career will be pretty small because youth and unemployment is pushing 40%. So let us remember the point of careers advice and guidance, which is to guide people onto a path that will give them satisfying range of jobs in an economy creating jobs like no other.
Order. The next debate is entitled Police Widows and Widows Pension. Mr. Richard Graham. Mr. Richard Graham.
With your permission, would it be in order to allow the police widows and widowers who are attending today to come into the room before we start?
In the public gallery. Certainly in the public gallery, Mr. Graham.
Yeah, in the public gallery. They're just outside and coming in.
I can ask him to start, sure.
Should we just...
I've never seen this before.
Mr. Graham, I think you must begin.
Mr. Williams, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, and a real pleasure to be able to stand here today on an issue which is important, I believe, to members across the House, and on which decisions made by ministers and the government in due course will to some extent hinge both the happiness of the many individuals involved and, in another sense, the reputation of the government and this House for ensuring that, as far as possible, justice can be given to those who, for no reasons of their own, find themselves in a very difficult situation. Let me try and sketch the background to how I come to be involved in bringing this debate to the House, run through some of the examples that I hope the Minister today in his place will be able to consider, and then summarise by making the argument for a case for the government to reconsider how police widows and widowers' pensions before 1987 are treated. Just before Christmas last year, I received an email from the Police Federation which outlined a situation which until then I hadn't been aware of. It pointed out that for a number of police widows and widowers from the 1987 police pension regulations did not allow them the opportunity to marry or cohabit without losing their right to a police widow or widower's pension for life. And the email highlighted the case being made by former PC Colin Hall's widow Catherine Hall, widowed at 24 years old in 1987 and left to bring up her 4-year-old daughter alone. Catherine, who is here today with us, as are some 15 other widows and widowers, was then faced with a very difficult decision of keeping her police widow's pension or moving in with her partner, which meant that she would no longer be eligible to receive the widow's pension. She set up a petition which now has over 71,000 signatures. And this campaign, which until Christmas last year I was unaware of, is the campaign today, Mr. Williams, which I would like the Police Minister to consider. In her own individual story, Catherine Hall described how her husband Colin died, described life after his death, and then came to make the case as to why she and other widows should be treated in the same way as those after the 1987 police pension regulations. And she made the point that the minister has a difficult position in terms of balancing the sacrifices of police officers and their widows or widowers against those in the armed forces, for whom, of course, there have been significant changes made on Remembrance Sunday last year, which I will come back to. Since being in contact with Catherine Hall, she has kindly introduced me to a number of other widows and widowers, who include two from my own county of Gloucestershire, Sharon Jones and Julie Shadwick, both of whom have sad stories to tell, and there are many others who've been in contact with their MPs. There isn't time, alas, in this debate to be able to read the stories of too many of them, but perhaps I can just mention Sharon's story. She was married to Ian Jones, a chief inspector in the Gloucestershire Police Force, who was killed in an accident in June 2005. And she survived on the pension that the service provided and brought up 3 children on her own since. She recently met another man and married him at the end of October last year, which brings, as she writes, a wonderful opportunity to start a new life. However, as a result, I have lost my pension entitlement, which she rightly describes as being penalised for finding new love after 10 years alone.
Will my honourable friend give way?
With pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Can I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this very important debate? Because we ask police officers to put their lives on the line to keep us safe, will my honourable friend agree with me that it's only fair that we do what the government has done for the armed forces widows and retrospectively amend these rules to make them fair for people like my constituent, Eileen Britton, and many more like her?
Yes, I mean, my honourable friend makes a very good point. That is precisely, for me, really the trigger as to why this campaign, I think, is so compelling. The changes made last November for the armed forces, I believe, should apply in the same way retrospectively, despite the fact that governments do not like retrospective legislation. The precedent has been set. He is absolutely right on that point. Let me now, if I may, Mr. Williams, just run through the technical issue that my honourable friend has just referred to. The campaign that Catherine Hall is leading is to some extent an issue of fairness. Before 2006, police widows, widowers or surviving civil partners would automatically lose their pension if they remarried or lived with a new partner. It did effectively compel them and their dependents to choose between future financial security, but loneliness at home, or the opportunity for happiness if they wished to marry or cohabit, but with the financial loss that the pension would have provided. I will, of course.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. Does the honourable gentleman accept that it's not just the widows, but also the children who are impacted by these decisions? Because as a parliament, we speak a great deal about the importance of children being brought up within a loving family. If we are condemning widows and widowers to live alone and to have their children outside of a loving family, that is also wrong and something that we should address and right.
Yes, I mean, the honourable member for Bridgend, as so often, makes a very good point. Children are often the people we don't mention in these sorts of issues, but they are absolutely those who can suffer the most. So I'm grateful to her. So, Mr. Williams, what changed, of course, in 2006 was society's perception of fairness. And the new scheme in 2006 recognised this. All new recruits and anyone who transferred to the new scheme, and of course there were some who didn't, now know that should the worst happen, their loved ones will receive their pension for life, irrespective of whether the survivor remarries or forms a new partnership, and it applies to unmarried but cohabiting partners too. So what happened, of course, was that the new regulations did not apply retrospectively to those who'd either left the service before 2006 or had died before that date. And for those like Catherine Hall and many who are here today, and the other perhaps 800 to 900 widows and widowers, but mostly widows, who are penalised in this way, it must be very frustrating to have remarried and seen their financial disadvantage relative to those who were widowed later. It is therefore an issue of fairness. Now, Mr. Williams, of course, things have changed. The regulations on police pensions in Northern Ireland have changed in, I think, last year. And more significantly, as I mentioned earlier, a very similar rule was amended for the armed forces, so that from April of this year, all widows and widowers of our armed forces can remarry or live with a new partner without losing their pension. And those are, I believe, retrospective. A precedent has, therefore, been set for further change. For what is true for soldiers, sailors, and airmen and women is also true for our police. Having to deal with the consequences of a husband or wife who has died in the course of duty is no less ghastly because it was on the streets of our cities than a dusty path in Helmand province. So today I am hoping that the Minister, who himself has seen active service in uniform, will be sympathetic to the case being made. In an email that he sent to Catherine Hall fairly recently, he rightly highlighted that it is appropriate for ministers to be able to make changes when a compelling case is made. And I know, Mr. Williams, that the Minister is a man who understands the duties of those who serve in uniform and the responsibilities of government to those who are left behind when they are either killed or die in accidents while on duty. And I know that his PPS, my honourable friend, the member for Winchester, is also supportive to the case being made by this group of widows and widowers who care so passionately about the opportunity to have happiness and retain their pension. I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm very grateful, and I'm sure all of us appreciate very much the case that my honourable friend is making, and I appreciate the chance to make an intervention on behalf of one of my unnamed constituents who is approaching his 70s and wants to change his position. Would my honourable friend also agree that this government has a good record in seeking to put right the errors of the past? And that's a further reason why, looking at what now appears to be an anomaly in our regulations, it would be welcomed as being in the spirit of what this government has sought to achieve in one or two other areas to correct things that might have been wrong in the past.
Yes, I mean, my honourable friend is absolutely right. The government does have a good case of trying to right problems and issues inherited from the past, if you like, historical leftovers that benefit many people when a government is able to tackle them with the fairness and justice that they deserve. And that is precisely why today's debate is timely. It comes some 3 months after you could argue an injustice towards widows and widowers of the armed forces was rightly addressed by this government. And today's debate gives an opportunity for the Police Minister to spell out what, in his view, are the challenges in getting a similar injustice addressed for the widows and widowers of this country's constabularies. And there are many cases. This morning I have met widows from Scotland, Lancashire, Yorkshire, all parts of southern England, as well as the two from my own county. And I think the common feature that they all share, apart from the badge that I am wearing on their behalf today, and which I think all of the widows here today are also wearing, which is a symbol of their unity to try and resolve this issue of the police pensions 1987 scheme. Very briefly.
I just wanted to make sure the Chairman knew that Diane Burns is here from Wales as well, and that we have across the country representation.
Yes, thank you. The Honourable Member has spoken for Wales. But the Minister, I hope, will be able to address this fundamental issue. I understand that his dilemma is one of trying to balance different issues, not least that of cost, which is always on any government's mind, and perhaps particularly this one with the huge debts inherited. But in his letter to me of the 11th of February, there is one particular point I would like to just ask him to consider today. He wrote in this that I had mentioned in my letter the changes made in respect of armed forces widows' pensions, and he wrote that the special circumstances of military personnel and their families presented a compelling argument for that change, supported by the Armed Force Covenant. Armed forces personnel have often been moved with little notice around the world and have been encouraged to take their families with them. Now, Mr. Williams, I believe that although it historically certainly was the case that armed forces personnel were often with their families posted around the world, the situation has changed considerably. And of course, police officers themselves have been posted all around the country, and indeed, as he knows himself, into Northern Ireland in situations of difficulty. We have at least one person here today whose husband was on duty in Bosnia with the police force. There will be others in Cyprus and other parts of the world. So I believe that if the argument in favour of armed forces widows' pensions is about them being moved and therefore not necessarily being able to create a normal working life and build up a pension of their own, the same argument can be made, at least to a considerable extent, for the families of serving police officers. And therefore I hope that that argument is not one that should be used in order to prevent the widows and widowers in the Catherine Hall petition from receiving justice. Of course I give way.
Very grateful for my congratulations on him securing this debate. Isn't it also about the sacrifice that these people have made in the service of our country, whether it be in the armed forces or in the police service? I had the pleasure of working with Karen Winterburn, whose husband Andy was killed in 2003. She's gone through very difficult anniversaries, and as she tries to rebuild her life, isn't it a shame that that sacrifice actually now has the issue of finance that she has to think about as she moves on and rebuilds her life?
Yes, my honourable friend is right. It is, I think, clearly something that all of us should share, is the belief that you should not have to think about whether you remarry or cohabit on the basis of wondering whether you're going to lose so much financially that happiness is not somehow so worthwhile. It is an extraordinary situation, and one I think we all feel, and I hope one that the Minister will address. He is a very fair, reasonable and compassionate man, and I am optimistic today that we will hear an opportunity for the Home Office to reconsider this case. Thank you very much.
Minister.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Williams, and can I reiterate the comments of my right honourable friend, member for Gloucester. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning. Can I indicate from the outset, even though it's a very short debate, if anybody hasn't had an opportunity to intervene on my honourable friend, then I will be happy to take interventions, because I think it's absolutely right, the colleagues that have been here from the start, there's no slight on the honourable gentleman, that need to get in should get in, and I think you're very generous in the interventions that my honourable friend gave. Mr. Williams, I come at this, as one of my friends said, not only as a uniformed former guardsman, but also as a firefighter, and served alongside the police in many, many instances in some very dangerous situations where they put their lives at danger, as well as the other emergency services as well. And the honourable gentleman from Gloucester did touch on the fact that Northern Ireland has already, with their devolved powers, acceded to the requests of the widows. I was the Northern Ireland Minister at the time, and even though that is a devolved matter, I can assure you I lobbied very heavily in Northern Ireland while I was there, and I hope I was part of the decision that was made in Northern Ireland. Can I say also, Mr. Williams, that even before I took on responsibilities as the Police Minister fairly recently, my honourable friend, my PPS at the time at the Department of Work and Pensions, who was sitting behind me, who was not allowed to speak to the protocol within the House, was already lobbying me on this issue, and we were already talking about it before fate decided that I was going to be the Police Minister for England and Wales. So can I pay tribute to my honourable friend, the member for Gloucester, and the honourable friend, member for Winchester, in campaigning on behalf of not only their constituents, but constituents from members across the House. And can I thank colleagues for writing to me, some many times, and some just because they wanted to know the position exactly where it's at. And I congratulate the campaigners on their online petition, which is growing daily. Of course.
I'm most grateful to my honourable friend from Gloucester for instituting this debate. Would he also accept that in the case of some, like my my own constituent, Mrs Penn, who's taken this up with me at her surgery, that there are many people who are supporting this campaign who are doing it on behalf of others. They may not necessarily be in the financial position where that pension is hugely necessary, but they are doing this on behalf of their colleagues who are in that position, and therefore this is something which I very much commend, this public spirit, the public-spirited nature of the petition. It's not just about those who need it, whom we fully respect their needs, but it's also about those who are doing it on behalf of others.
I completely agree with what my honourable friend has said, and I think the way that the compassion has been shown in the correspondence is quite remarkable. And I think for others that are campaigning on different issues, if they could take a look at the way this campaign has been done, they might find that other campaigns might have a not dissimilar being supported across the House. Just on a negative point, Mr. Williams, I just want to take a slight issue, and perhaps I would do as a former guardsman, with my honourable friend of Gloucester, to do with the similarities between the military covenant decisions that we made, which I was part and parcel of the drafting of the military covenant in opposition in my correspondence to colleagues, and where I've said that there is a difference between the military, and I just want to touch on the point to do with the deployment. Thank goodness we have got most of our troops home now from Iraq and Afghanistan. I say most, but there's still some very brave people out there assisting in training. That does not mean that the British Armed Forces is not deployed around the world. And I know the Honourable Lady has been with me around the world. There are British servicemen and their families in Cyprus and in the Falklands and other parts of the world where they deploy, and it is not of their choice. Very often, and I've had mutual aid, as the Honourable Gentleman alluded to, I had mutual aid in Northern Ireland when we ran the G8 summit at Lough Erne. We couldn't have done it without the other forces from the rest of Great Britain coming to help us. But they all volunteered. Now, I'm not saying everybody volunteers in every case, but there is a difference in deployment terms between the military covenant and the military and this. That does not take away the argument that is there, and I repeat the word that I've used in the correspondence since I've been the police minister, the compelling argument that is actually here in these cases. We have heard in the Honourable Gentleman's presentation that there is a bit of scepticism, to say the least, no matter what colour government is in, when you use the word retrospective. The Treasury has jitters galore, but the important thing about what we're doing now is after we've said there is a compelling case, and the Home Secretary and I asked for our officials to look into the effects of how this would happen, it is not just the Home Office, it's Home Office and Treasury officials working together. And that's very, very important, because we must make sure that the decision we make on this is not only the right decision, but it is not a decision that has a huge impact in other aspects and can be used, for instance, for judicial review for other people that are claiming through the different schemes. I personally come to this in a very personal way. PC Frank Mason was murdered in my constituency, off-duty, walking his dog, minding his own business, and saw a bank robbery taking place and intervened and was murdered. Frank, like all officers, was a warranted officer. So in other words, when he was off duty, he was really still on duty. He could be called in off duty. He could be called in. His warrant was with him all the time. And I think that's where the difference is, why I say there is such a compelling argument, why the Home Secretary and I, is because if you are a full-time police officer in the police force of England and Wales, I make the point that the Honourable Lady made, absolutely. I'm just as proud of being a police officer for Wales as well as England. The other two administrations that devolved, and I'm sure they'll be looking at this debate and this campaign as well. But if you are a warranted service of the Queen, then you're off duty, you are still responsible. Different terminologies can be used, but that's what I feel. You are still serving your community even when you're off duty. And that brings pressures on you, and it brings responsibilities on as well. So one of the things that when I raised the issue with the Police Federation only recently when they come to see me, and it was me that raised it, it wasn't on their agenda, there's no slight on them, there was lots of other things they wanted to talk about, but I specifically wanted to talk about this. I said to them, we need to narrow down what we're talking about here. An officer on duty, what does that mean? Does that mean that they are actually on shift? or someone like Frank Mason that was actually assisting the public off-duty. And I'm quite adamant that if this scheme comes through, and if we make the changes, the likes of Frank Mason, should his widow wanted to, would be helped. If that person was driving to work off-duty and was involved in an RTC, I'm afraid I don't think that would be the case, because I don't think they were on duty. I think there's a difference. And I think most people accept that. And the Federation, I think, accepted that point with me. So we are now in a really, really important stage as to we analyse what the implications would be in cost terms, analyse the implications not just for the scheme, but for other schemes that could be deemed to be involved. For instance, we used the example that because 3 months ago, I think we did exactly the right thing for the armed forces, now we're using that example for the police. We have to be really careful as to whether or not, if we did this, it would actually implicate on other schemes. But I think the compelling case, Mr. Williams, that has been put forward by colleagues here today and by others, and by the nature and the tone and the empathy of the way that a campaign is being dealt with, has really, really been enormously helpful for me as a minister, and for instance with the Home Secretary, to say, yes, there is a complaint. That language, I think, is the first time it's been used. And I give way to the Honourable Gentleman.
I thank the Minister for giving way. And all I wish to do is to associate myself and those in Montgomeryshire who have contacted me, and I think there's about 6 people in this position, to really help strengthen that argument. And a number of other MPs who would like to have been here this morning haven't been, and have told me how much they'd like to have been here, because this is a major issue of fairness, and I think it has pretty widespread support right across the House.
I think what my honourable friend has said would have empathy across the House. I don't think there are reasons why, and there are always reasons why, anomalies, as it was described earlier on, like this are out there, and there are reasons why it can't be addressed. That's always the case. But I think one of the things that I've been very conscious of, which is when we were talking about this privately, Mr. Williams, the gentleman, honourable gentleman, and my honourable friend for Gloucester, talking about this, and I said to him, put in for the debate, if you remember the conversation we had. I think it's important. I think it's important that members have the opportunity to not only write to ministers, but actually to hear a minister say what I've said in my own correspondence, that because of the compelling arguments that have been put forward here, we have asked the officials, not only in the Home Office, but across government, particularly the Treasury, to look at what the implications would be and how this could be progressed. Once we get that back, of course, which may be slightly above my pay grade at this stage, Mr. Williams, as we get so close to the budget and as we get so close to a general election, I think at the end of the day, yes, I think at the end of the day, I think the language, which of course, and the language I'm using today, I am going as far as I possibly can without actually announcing what the officials have found and what the implications of that are. Well, of course.
Very briefly. He is saying encouraging things in an encouraging tone and paying tribute to the great campaign run by the widows and widowers. And he's absolutely right about the tone of this whole debate and the issue in the campaign. Does he believe that, in a sense, this is now a wonderful opportunity to be able to do something that is fair, even if, as he rightly says, we can't always do things that right the injustices of the past? Because the budget is so close and because the general election comes afterwards, would it not be a wonderful thing for this government to be able to tackle this problem now?
I think my right honourable friend, who's just about still a friend, is drawing me into budget speculation, which I've just about been around long enough not to be drawn into. However, I do believe that the Chancellor is speaking at the 22 this evening, so the 1922 committee, but there may be opportunities to put it at the mechanic rather than the oily rag, as the saying may go. I think I've been lucky to be part of a government which has, I've had opportunities to make changes where, as my honourable friend alluded to earlier on, that there were anomalies with it. I was absolutely chuffed to take through the mesothelioma legislation, so that people that, for no fault of their own, had caught a terrible, horrible disease, and have been left out of compensation because we couldn't track their employer, because we couldn't track the insurers. And that compensation, I'm really pleased now, is up to 100%, even though we thought we wouldn't be able to get to the budget. So I completely concur that we need to look, we need to make sure we can do what is right for our constituents. This is the first time, I understand, that it's gone to the levels it has, with the analysis being done both at the Home Office and at the Treasury. And I look forward to getting my reports on my desk as soon as possible. But I also think that it may be an opportunity to perhaps have a word with the Chancellor as to what he might think could be in the budget. But I'm sure he won't get a direct answer until the budget day. Thank you very much.
I suspend the sitting until 2:30 this afternoon. Order. Order.